One man bully Zion, to the other man retaliate.
So we're a few weeks away from the 20th anniversary release of One Day, and the album starts with the track Humanity Ballin'. It's written in part about Israel and your relationship to it. Your brother was a member of the African Hebrew Israelite community, and while in college in the 90s, you followed what was happening in that country closely. And today, we can't look anywhere without seeing the atrocities that are going on there. But the African connection to Israel and to Judaism is ancient, and that's not often discussed. So, what does this song mean to you 2 decades later? And is humanity still ballin' in the same way?
Yeah. This song, for me, it hit me on several levels. And so I spoke about different things. I spoke about Palestine and Israel. I spoke about the Hindus and the Muslims in India, and then India and Pakistan, and then the AIDS epidemic at that time in Africa. And it's been a very profound song for me because I wrote it, but it's one thing to write a song. It's another thing to actually perform it in front of people who are living that reality. We went to Israel and we performed in a kibbutz. We performed in Tel Aviv. We performed in Dimona, Israel, at the Passover festival for the African Hebrew Israelites. And one time during the show in Tel Aviv, I asked the band to play quiet, and I asked them, so, what about this Palestinian thing, man? And this was like in 2005. And one guy shouted out in the crowd, that's how it is. And I shouted, I have the microphone, so I'm the loudest in the room. And I said to him, well, things need to change, man. So after the show, a sister came up to me and she thanked me profusely for taking time to talk about the issue, to raise it, And that performance, I actually added something to the song when we performed it live. And one of my big inspirations in the music is Steel Pulse. And the lead singer of Steel Pulse, David Hines, tremendous songwriter that has had a great impact in teaching me things as a high school student that they weren't teaching me in high school, And so I remember one of the songs he sang on the Earth Crisis album, he said, "Who shall save the human race? It's a shame, a big disgrace. Who shall save the human race?" And so I started repeating that as we played in Tel Aviv. Who shall save the human race? And it just came as a thought, that was there, along an influence from high school. And I started repeating it, and the band started to harmonize with me. And we just raised up the level of that, who shall save the human race? And I say that to say, the song means a lot to me in the sense of I care about the human experience. When tragedy is happening, when there's an earthquake and buildings are falling and crumbling, I'm thinking about the person that's trapped, in that human experience. They're no longer ethnicity, they're no longer this or that. They are trapped and they're crying out for help in this circumstance, And so for me, that's what Humanity Ballin' has meant for me. Like, I have a chance to cry out or bawl out on a microphone to speak for those who are trapped. And they're trapped in circumstances, they're trapped with political leaders who are affluent and doing things that benefit them and not the people. They're trapped in historical context, in historical stuff, man. It's so many layers of stuff, that's going on. So, for me, that song, it means that to me, another thing it means to me, Derek, is I'm a student of history. I'm a history teacher. I teach high schools. I teach history in high school and stuff. And I've always been interested in it. I was in 5th grade and I was into watching the news in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands about the oil crisis in 1976. I'm a little kid and I'm into the TV and seeing the cars line up at the gas stations and Jimmy Carter is the president and blah, blah, blah. So I've been into that. And what I've seen through history is that the people that are religious, they throw their religious out. They identify and define themselves by their religion, have been the most destructive people on this planet. And so when I say in Humanity Balling, about Pakistan and India now both having nuclear arms, and these playing these ungodly games. If you're so much about God, what's up with these ungodly games, in Jerusalem, we went to the Wailing Wall, I think was the Temple of Solomon. The last wall is standing. And we went in there, and to get in there, we had to go through X-ray machines. We had to go past machine guns, soldiers, just to go in this place of prayer. And then once we got in there, the women are separated to the right, the men are separated to the left, and everyone has their own traditions, but the minuscule divisions that we create collectively adds up to this big divide. And it's been destruction just coming from the religious sides, So that's what it's really been meant to me on all those levels, man. Which man will be the first one to say, yo, I'm done with the past and the hate. How can we live together within reason? You know what I mean? So is humanity still balling in the same way? 20 years later, I have to say, yeah, it's been a cycle. It's been a circle. It's just history repeating itself because the so-called leaders haven't changed their course and the people haven't made any serious demands to create change. And until one of those things happen, balling, boy, just to think of what's going on the planet is like, years ago when my brother was in Africa, Hebrew Israelites, I say, yo, bro, I was like, I thinking about going into the hills and just living alone, man, just getting away from the craziness. And my brother, who was selling drugs on the street at one time, robbing people at one time, he was a criminal at one time in his life, and now he was in a religious or spiritual group and living in Israel. He said to me, yo, Jalani, you going into the mountains to live, who is that going to help? And I was like, wow. So, humanity is still balling in all these ways. And it's really up to us to define the future, you know what I mean? Define the present, define the future. It's by our hands. And it's not the hope that President Obama talked about. And no, it's up to us. You know what I mean? It's really up to us. Because if an event spark off here in the United States, even though we don't hate each other, do I have time to listen to you? Do you have time to listen to me? Or is just I black and you white? You know what I mean? Like, like you create that fear and that immediate response vibes, and we're so easy to be divided now, man. Things I think things may have gotten worse, bro, because now we have social media. And instead of helping, people pull out their phone to record. you know?
Yeah. You mentioned the destructiveness of religion. That's inarguable historically and in the present day. I'm personally scared of the Christian nationalism in America right now more than most. But I've also had this career where I've talked to people from around the world who play music, and there's a spiritual component to it. And I've talked to a lot of reggae artists, and it seems to me there's something inherently embedded, an inherent embedded spirituality to reggae that doesn't exist in a lot of other music forms. And I'm wondering what drew you to reggae and what was that spiritual connection for you?
Yeah, I didn't grow up with a father. I didn't grow up with a male role model under my roof. So my role models were guys that were older than me in my neighborhood. A few of them were Rasta. So my mentorship was in my neighborhood, and the music that they played was roots reggae. And, dancehall too, but roots reggae. And roots reggae became prominent for me. My aunts would bring home, I remember my aunt, they were teenagers. They bought the Bob Marley live album, Bob Marley and the Wailers live. And we listened to that on the record player. So the lyrics, and then I would sit down with the albums. I remember opening Rastaman Vibration album from Bob Marley and the Wailers. And I read each lyric as the song was playing, and it stuck with me. It moved me. And then when Steel Pulse came on the scene later on, I was really, I knew some songs from the early 80s, but by the mid 80s, what really hit me was the True Democracy album, and then the Earth Crisis album. And the lyrics. So the music, man, the music has been constant in my life. There was a iconic brother back in St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. His name was Ras Reg, or is Ras Reg. And Ras Reg played on the People Station, which is WSTA. It's an AM station. But every Friday night or Saturday night, Ras Reg would start his reggae show playing a dub from the Aswad dub album, mixed by Mikey Dread. And that became an anthem, And so there's a lot, Derek, like, the Volkswagen Bugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, In the Virgin Islands, the Volkswagen Bug is a symbol of revolution, rebellion, and reggae because only Rasta man would drive those Volkswagen Bugs. It could be fixed up with rims on it looking nice. It could be raggedy. But every Bug had a sound system in it and was ponging the roots music, you know? And, you know, as a child, as a teenager, my dream car was a Bug. Not a Porsche, not a Ferrari. It's a Bug. Anything from the 60s, you know? So yeah, it hit me because it was all around me. In the Virgin Islands, we listen to everything on the radio. We listen to stations from Puerto Rico. We hear we from Dominican Republic, bachata, salsa, calypso, soca from Trinidad. But reggae is the one that hit me hard. The bass line, the vibes, the lyrics, you know, the lyrics. While I was in college, I was contemplating doing the military, going in as an officer. So they said I could go to this camp for the summer, and when I come back, I have to make my final decision. So they sent me to Fort Knox, Kentucky. I was out in the woods. Yo, I was so miserable, man. And when I was taking a shower, I would sing my heart out. And I sing in all these songs. And guys would come to me like, yo, Horton, what's that you're singing, man? I love those lyrics, man. And so I would sit down and explain to them, you know, what the lyrics mean and stuff like that. So, you know, roots music hit me on that level because it had a tremendous, like it hit the planet. It had a tremendous impact on the Virgin Islands. And, you know, we listen to everybody. The Wailers, Peter Tosh, Bonnie Wailer, Steel Pulse, Burning Spear, all of that, you know, all of that was phenomenal, you know.
So you went through some of the Caribbean music forms there. You landed on reggae. What would you say that either St. Thomas, your home island, or the Virgin Islands in general, what unique flavor do they bring to reggae?
Derek, I've been probably asked that question 100 times. I'll try my best. In 1917, the United States bought those islands from Denmark for $25 in gold, $25 million in gold. So those islands became U.S. possessions. And we went from speaking a Danish Creole to speaking an English Creole. That was 1917. My grandmother, who raised me, was born in 1925. You know? So there's this whole melting pot mix up. A lot of our families in the Virgin Islands are from what they call the British Virgin Islands. Slavery was ended 14 years in the British Virgin Islands before our islands. But our family members are over there. So they would come and visit, you know. So there's this whole melting pot, you know. A lot of people from Puerto Rico came to St. Croix. You know, my brethren of Bambu Station, Andy Llanos, his family just celebrated, I think, their 75th anniversary in St. Croix, you know, the Encarnacion family, you know. So there's this whole melting pot. But the one thing that's constant from reggae artists from the Virgin Islands is the adeptness, the acumen of the lyrics. everyone, a majority of the VI artists, VI reggae, their lyrics, it's not the cliche stuff that's been sung for the last 40 years, 30 years, 40, 50 years. You know, in Bamali them era, there was colonialism still in place in a physical sense. And in the 80s, by the mid 80s, a lot of that changed, at least physically. And so in the Virgin Islands, we have been able to maintain a lot of our African presence. And it comes out. My entire life has been based in confidence. And I'll explain it in this way. When I went to college, I first started in North Carolina. And the folks we met asked us where we're from, and they told us we act different. And what we realized, it was this sense of confidence we walk with, because everything in my life, Black senator, Black governor, Black doctor, Black teacher, everything I know in my life is Black. So there was never no sense of inferiority for me, you know, and that's been our experience. And so we have been able to speak for a long time. We have been able to speak forth our mind and things like that. In 1878, Derek, 1878, 30 years after emancipation happened, the people of St. Croix realized that conditions were worse than slavery. And in 1878, what we call queens, a queen is a prominent woman on a plantation that the people listen to and they lead. Well, a group of queens led a revolt in St. Croix in 1878. We call it the fire burn, you know? And the most prominent name that came out of that was Queen Mary. And they went and burned Frederickstead and, you know, went up the island, burning. And so they, you know, they were rebelling against the conditions and stuff like that. So there's been a real history, you know, over 100 years of being able to have that self-expression, even when slavery was in place, you know. There's a popular dance, well, there's an African dance in the Virgin Islands that we call Bambula, straight out of Africa. And so we were able to still practice traditions and stuff like that. And then with the mix-up of people, with the US buying the islands and stuff, there's been so much mixture of cultures. So we have the roots music, the heavy bass lines, you know, but like in say comparing it to Jamaican roots music, roots music had a lot of textures to it, whereas the VI music is scaled down. It's a lot of fundamental and foundation components to the music, and then the lyrics are sharp. People like Pressure Bus Pipe, Nayora, Icarus, Akebika, Desiree, like what the brethren in Junior P, Ras Batch, Ras Attitude. Like when you listen to their songs, they come in with some insightful, poetic expressions, you know? And I think the world has been listening because I have been hearing some younger artists speaking or bringing forward songs on that level where now I could sit and listen to them and they are feeding me. You know what I mean? Like I listen to them and getting stuff from them. I listened to this unplugged vibe that it wasn't unplugged. But Chronics, it was a live Chronics thing with him and his band alone. And I sit and listen to the entire performance. And the concepts and the critical thinking in poetic verse that he is dropping feeds my soul, feeds me. You know what I mean? The Brethren Protege, I just saw him do a little a cappella thing the other day. Because I'm not on social media much, you know, but I saw some stuff and he was hitting some stuff and I was like, yeah. Bob Marley them said we got to unite, right? Africans got to unite and this and that. Now, this generation, we have to bring solutions. In these times, we have to talk about solutions, not just the cliche stuff. Bun the Pope. Okay, yeah, what I really mean? We need to dissect what bun the Pope mean. What do you want us to do? What do you mean to say? Literally bun the Pope? Or you need to examine the religious doctrine and the political practices and realize blah 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 blah. You know, we in this generation have to speak on those levels of solution in our songs. You know what I mean? Everywhere we have gone on this planet, we have heard reggae music. It is the most played music on the planet, which means that this critical thinking that we can employ in it can help the people on the planet execute the change to stop the balling from happening. You know what I mean? To stop the misleaders, the foolishness, the division, the divisive tactics, and all of these things, you know? So, yeah, so I hope I answer your question.
Well, you talk about what you mentioned songs, and let's talk about Gunsmoke, because you wrote that to discuss how the energy of the island had changed. You had been living away from it in the States for a while, and to cite how much more gun violence was happening at the time. And this is 20 years ago. So can you talk a little about the feeling behind that song, and has the situation changed at all?
Right up front, the situation has changed. It has gotten worse.
I was afraid of that.
There are no gun stores on the island. There are no stores that sell guns in the Virgin Islands. Legally. Bro, I have heard weapons that sound like the Gaza Strip. Let me paint this picture for you. I am up on the tallest mountain in St. Thomas, overlooking the ocean and the neighborhoods below. Picturesque, dark sky, moon glistening off the water, lights from the neighborhoods, you know, so it's dotted. Beautiful. And I heard bop, 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 bop. I am hearing it from down below. I am literally in a straight line. I might be less than a mile from where it's at, if we went in a straight line. In my head, when it stopped, I was able to repeat the gunshots in my head. So I knew exactly how much it was. It was like 10. This was maybe 3-4 years ago. It was like 10 or 12 gunshots. But this was an anti-tank kind of machine gun being shot. There are no stores on the island that sell guns. But we have some of the most sophisticated weaponry down there. Who is bringing them in? We know who is buying them. Who is bringing them? You know, we have DEA. We have all the federal agencies down there. You can look up in the sky and look at their satellites. Every morning, and I get some coffee, the agents are getting out their cars, getting ready to go to work. So it has gotten worse. The murders have gotten worse. It's gotten more brazen. They're shooting in high daytime. They're shooting in populated areas during the day. You know, I went to Jamaica. I went to the Some Festival in Montego Bay. And I saw vendors. I went in vending booths and stuff like that. And what I saw in Jamaica, I don't see in the Virgin Islands. We did some shows, not Bambu Station, but production companies I work with, Westline Productions and Showline Productions. They did a few shows with Buju Banton back in the 90s when he dropped the Till Shiloh album. Buju didn't want to stay in a hotel. He wanted to be with us. So he hung in with us. So one of my brethren said, yeah, Buju, we down here in the ghetto. And Buju look around. I was like, Regin, these look like condos. And for the first time, the ghettos we know in St. Thomas, we had a different perspective based on what this man telling us. And it did look like low-rise condos, you know? And so it has gotten worse. And it's simply, so it's not about poverty. It's not about poverty. You know, it's the lack of accountability. It's the lack of being inspired. You know, for whatever reason, the lack of being inspired to go forward. You know what I mean? Because St. Thomas is what, 32 square miles. St. Croix is like 52 or something like that, square miles. Our total population is 100,000 of the three islands combined is 115, 118,000 people. There's not that many places to go. So, is it about territory? Nah. We don't run things. The big money and the big drugs are being smuggled from South America through the Virgin Islands, through the British Islands to Florida. That's not our people. We don't control those things. So, you know, it's gotten worse, bro. And when I wrote Gunsmoke, it was because of some news I heard about St. Croix, you know, and what was going on and stuff like that. So, you know, I wanted to bring attention to that, you know, and, you know, in some of Gunsmoke, I'm trying to talk if a gunman is listening to Gunsmoke, I am hoping that he can kind of see what I'm saying. One man pull his iron and the other man retaliate while the youths them in the street playing. And so one of them youths die, Innocent victim is what the newsman will say. But I say no, because that gunman was once a youth, and we, the community, has let his life go to waste. So, it's worse, bro. It's worse, and it's now ingrained. And listen to this. We now have Bloods and Crips in a major way. On 32 square miles, there are some guys that don't come to town. It's incredible, bro. It's incredible. You know what I mean? It's incredible. So,
Yeah.
As I've been teaching, I taught for until I moved back here to the States. I taught in the high schools for 10 years. And I had some really powerful moments with some of my students, man. I gave them an assignment. I noticed one guy isn't doing anything. He's just staring. So I said, yo, come to my office. And my office was always outside the door by the railing where we could talk in private, No, I didn't tell him to come. He asked me, Mr. Horton, can I talk to you? I said, sure, come in my office. And he said, well, last night I dropped my girl off, and while I was sitting there, this guy ran up on the car and he shot 6 times. And I didn't get hit, but there were bullets in the headrest. And he said he just sat there. He didn't try to do anything. He was just caught. And this dude was like in 11th grade. So I told him, my first question to him is, okay, you all right? Why are you here in school, bro? This happened last night. What is your family going to do? Are you going to get off the island? Blah, 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 blah. I've had moments like that. I coach girls basketball. One of my players, she got shot in her leg, man. Because her brother is ganging, and when they see she, it's really like they seen him, We were able to get her off the island, get her into a college scholarship because she had good skills. So she graduated from university in Pennsylvania, and she hasn't come back home. So we don't have abject poverty in the Virgin Islands, bro. So it's more things going on, and it's gotten worse, and it's now become kind of generational, and now we have Bloods and Crips.
Yeah. You mentioned social media earlier, and I really feel that if social media was around when Amadou Diallo was shot, there could have been George Floyd level protests back then. For people who don't know, they fired 41 rounds, 19 hit him. This was the New York City police officers in the Bronx. He'd done nothing wrong. He reached into his pocket to get his ID, pulled out his wallet, and they shot him. And that is the name and the subject of your first single from One Day. So what was it about that event that you wanted to capture and release as your first single?
Wow. It wasn't planned to be the first release from the album, because when we recorded it, the album didn't exist and we weren't recording the album. It's just that in the timing it happened, I sat down and wrote the song. And Andy Janos told me, he said, yo, bro, we should record this song and release it, So we did, I reached out to the brethren, Tough Lion, I reached out to a brethren from St. Croix, Ras Batch, who had his own studio. And I asked him if he could help us record it. And he was like, cool. So we went by him. And in one day we recorded it. You know, again, having those sensibilities of the human experience, you know. Imagine walking down the street going home and a car is following you with 4 guys in it. And you look round, you're looking, and they're still following you. And then you reach home and you go up your stairs to your apartment. And they jump out the car with guns, guns drawn. 4 guys jump out the car with guns drawn. And you're not from this country, so you don't really know, like, you just try and get in your apartment and you pull out your keys and 41 bullets. Yeah. So, you know, I don't remember the full scope of everything I wrote about that song at the time, but I was trying to capture what we are experiencing in this country, you know, that going crazy is the least of our troubles, you know. We have hopes and dreams. And like Diallo, like Amadou, you know, and in 2024, we reflect back. There's so much has transpired. It has gotten worse. And I might pull that back and not say that it got worse. It's just now we're being able to see it. You know? When I looked at the George Floyd, I still have not looked at that video. I just looked at an image of the police officer kneeling on George Floyd with his hands in his pocket to project the sense of, see, I'm not doing anything. And he didn't think that was something. And that's what we are living with, man. Like, we can have all the hopes and dreams we want, but there are people who are, I'm going to just say dumb. I'm going to throw out the word uneducated. I don't like to use that word, but I'm going to say uneducated, lack of achievements, lack of vision, lack of charity. There's so many people that lack of and hate people that are, in the most basic sense, way more valuable than them simply because of this concept they have picked up along the way or in their family or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's crazy, bro. It's crazy. Amadou Diallo, after we recorded the song shortly after, there was an anniversary of the March on Washington, and his parents attended. So we were able to present a copy of some CDs of that single to their parents. And I heard that they gave them out to, specific people in New York area radio stations and stuff like that. But it was just a gift to say that we see Amadou, we call his name, we remember him, we don't want to forget him. You know, so at some point, I would like to do a music video to capture that song and to introduce a generation to the lack of change that exists. And hopefully this generation could move the bar forward, you know. I want to speak to something, Derek, because I always try to be a positive dude, man. I always look at the cup half full. I try to. But I've been seeing these commercials, right? Stop hate. And it has the blue square. Stop hate. Stop Jewish hate. Stop Muslim hate. Stop black hate. Stop all hate. That's a great message because hate is the common denominator, right? Cool. Until I found out who is running those ads. The guy for the Patriots, the owner, Bob Kraft. Okay, Bob Kraft. When Colin Kaepernick tried to bring attention in a respectful way based on a suggestion by the Navy SEAL, instead of sitting on a bench to protest or to bring attention, you should take a knee. Colin Kaepernick said, thanks for that advice. So he started taking a knee. And his only statement was, want to bring attention to the police brutality in our communities. Hate. Colin Kaepernick has never played again in the NFL. And Mr. Bob Kraft was in a position to do what is right and to stand against hate by then President Trump and the other ownership to bring Colin Kaepernick to the Patriots. Symbolically. So for me right now, maybe now he understands. So he's doing this. But it's hard for me, bro, to really look at that as what it is. When you get hot, is a problem. It's an epidemic. When we get hot, there's crackheads. You know what I mean? And so, yeah. But which man will be the first one to show love? We always the show love, you know, so yeah, man. Yeah.
So you're gonna be showing some love with this release. You have 4 new tracks. They'll be digital only, and I want to ask you about them to wind down here. We just talked a few minutes ago about Gunsmoke, but you have a version called Gunsmoke Epic. So what makes this version epic?
The Gunsmoke Epic includes, in addition to the original lyrics that we first released, it also includes another verse that I never released before. And it's a conversation I had with my cousin, who had a conversation with his brother. And his brother was killed. And so the verse, I'm revisiting, I'm replaying the conversation he has with his brother and then the conversation I had with him, you know? And so that neighborhood where I heard those shots coming from below me, same neighborhood. So the epic is about 9 minutes long. So there's a lot that's in there, but mostly it's that new verse and, you know, some other tinkering, you know?
Yeah, it's quite a journey. I love that version. You also have Tough Smoke, which is an instrumental of it, but then you added guitar playing. How did the idea for that come around?
If you don't know Tough Lion, boy. Tough Lion is a guitarist that has meant the world to VI reggae music. He has recorded, he might have been the most recorded guitarist in reggae in the last 20 years. But but in the VI, the most recorded guitarist, because he has been on everything because of his sound, his approach, his ability, his skills. Is fantastic. He did an instrumental album with I Grade Records called 10 Strings. He did a legendary album with the band Midnight. And there's a song called Banking in the Pig. And he starts his song off with 3 minutes of blues licks, nothing else. And then the band came in on top of that. So by this time, Top had joined Bambu Station and we've been rolling, man. And so once we recorded the one day track, we sat back and said, yo, it's on you. Play what you feel. Because I love to catch the raw emotion of a singer or instrumentalist, because there's no take as good as that first take. And Tough did what Tough does. So I'm looking forward to sharing Tough Smoke with the people. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a moment decades ago now. I sat in the apartment of a man named Patrick Holsey, who is a reggae fan. He made the movie Rockers, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And there's a moment where Burning Spear is singing John O'Dead to Horsemouth. That is one of my favorite moments in any movie ever. And when I listened to So Much Love, it had that same sort of beauty and sentiment behind it, that feeling. And that's one of the songs that's new to this. So can you talk about So Much Love?
Yeah. One of my good friends became the bass player for Midnight when they hit their big popularity in the mid 2000s. And Phil was visiting from St. Croix, and he came over by me, and he, Andy, and I decided to sit down and record the One Day album because I had songs. And after we did the gist of the stuff, we recorded a song called How I Feel, a love song that I wrote. And I told them I needed, I wanted something to introduce that love song, So Phil went on the keyboards and he started tinkering around, and he put down a vibe on keys on electric piano that was beautiful, When I heard it, I was like, yo. And I was like, so much love forever in such a shot. I was like, yo, that's it. And so on the album, the original release, it's called The Interlude or Interlude. On this re-release, we call it So Much Love, because I thought I always wanted to give that track more breath. I wanted it to be a little longer, so we added maybe a minute and a half to it, and we added some horn playing from brethren named Jabless to it. And when they sent that to me, and I heard what Jabless did on it, I was like, you have captured how I felt. You have taken it to another level. That's it, So much love, I know people will enjoy it,
Yeah. And, we've talked about a lot today. Some hope, all music comes as a response. All folk music comes as a response. If you go around the world to tango, to flamenco, to Balkan music, it's always comes from people who don't have the power, who are trying to express themselves in some way to tell their story, to tell a different story than the one that is usually told by the oppressor, which is very important. That's a role that I think music is really essential for. And you end this release with One Upful Day, which is a very upbeat track, and it has some sense of inspiration behind it. And you sing, "One day righteousness will rule." So it's sort of, you talked about symbols before. It's symbolic to end this release on that note. What does it take for righteousness to rule?
Derek, this is a great time in my life in the sense of clarity. A brethren said that to me, a brethren named Abba Zero in Berkeley, California, the Ashkenaz. He came up to me. That's the first time he heard our band. You know, he grabbed my hands and he said, "Clarity, brethren, clarity." I am at a serious clarity right now. To make righteousness rule, we have to rule our own actions. If Derek is kind, if Jalani is kind, if I can't be kind to you, Derek, I will strive my best to not hurt you, to not bring you pain or to make things more difficult for you. You know what I'm saying? And you the same. So I think our actions are more important than any belief systems we have. I don't care whoever you're praying to, whoever you're praying to. The most important thing that exists in our society is our actions, because they have results, they have consequences, you know? And so something I've long been saying is, by our hands that changes will be made. You know what I mean? And so I've come to evolution of that thought that really it's about our actions, you know? Kind or unkind, you know? If I seen you in an alley acting like you hot, do I go in that dark alley to help that man I see me? He might be trying to do something to me. Okay. Let me call the police to help him. You know what I mean? If I can't physically help him, let me at least try. And maybe not even the police in this time. Maybe I call the fire department. You know what I mean? So yeah, one day righteousness will rule is really about us being accountable for our own actions, man. One upful day, you know. I started the song by saying, every man makes a difference, you know? And that's collectively, we can't get away from that. The small actions collectively are big actions. You know, everyone makes a difference. Every woman makes a difference. The way we daps make a difference. Let me tell you a quick story. 6 seconds long. I went in a classroom here in the States as a substitute teacher, right? And I came in and I said, "Good morning." No one responded. I look at these youths in high school. And then I said, "Good morning." Then they said, "Everybody, good morning." I was like, wow. You know, so it's really, really about us being accountable for our own actions and how we deal with each other, how we treat each other, how we defend each other, how we speak up for each other, how we might take a bullet for each other. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we are the people. We are the people. So one day.
Youths them in the streets are playing. Someone life gets destructed.